We literally see it every single day on our feeds and screens, politicians behaving badly. But how do these controversies actually cross over from, say, the front page of a newspaper into the permanent fabric of our pop culture? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the connections between political misdeeds and our entertainment. And we'll be doing this by drawing directly from Jim Twombly's really fascinating research on political scandal in American pop culture. Think about it for a second. Why are we so obsessed with throwing the "gate" suffix onto the end of literally every controversy? From Deflategate to Spygate, we attach it to almost everything. But here's the catch. Not every controversy is a true scandal. And honestly, not every scandal successfully infiltrates pop culture. So how do we tell the difference? We need a strict set of rules to evaluate these historical moments.
Okay, here's the game plan for today. First, we'll define scandals and culture. Second, we'll look at Watergate as the gold standard. Third, we've got Koreagate. Fourth is ABSCAM. And finally, Iran-Contra.
All right, part 1, defining scandals and culture. Let's set some ground rules. So, what exactly do we mean by pop culture? Basically, it's the advancement of ideas or events through entertainment and media that produces a lasting effect on a massive audience. And the absolutely crucial word there is lasting. To qualify, an event needs to create an enduring joke, a permanent symbol, or, a lasting meme. It's not just a passing headline. It's a shared experience that kind of bonds a community together. Right, next up, we need to get super strict on what a political scandal actually is. We're looking at behavior by a public official that's meant to advance a personal agenda, whether that's sex, money, or just holding on to power. But here's the kicker. It has to be behavior that would absolutely destroy their position if the public found out. It's a transgression so serious, it forces a massive, widespread public response. We really have to draw a hard line here between reputation-shattering scandals like a collapsing pillar of government type of event and what we'll call ordinary corruption. Think of historical political machines like Tammany Hall or the infamous Chicago Way. A lot of times, the public just shrugs off everyday greed and quiet handshakes as just, business as usual. A true scandal has to transcend that mundane stuff and truly shock us. Moving on to part 2, Watergate. This is the gold standard, our ultimate test case. Let's rewind to June 1972. You have this break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Now, initially, the public pretty much shrugged it off as a third-rate burglary, just dirty politics. But look at how this escalated. By July 1973, the revelation of the Oval Office taping system exposed this sprawling cover-up. It became entirely about maintaining power at all costs, and it culminated in President Nixon's historic resignation in August 1974. 71%. That number is just staggering. 71% of Americans watched the Senate Watergate hearings live. To put that into perspective, in an era with only a few broadcast networks and literally zero cable news, the entire nation was transfixed. This wasn't just politics anymore, guys. It was a daily, shared cultural obsession. And Watergate completely rewrote the rules for pop culture. Impressionist David Fry released these top-selling comedy albums predicting the fallout. Johnny Carson turned his late-night comedic weaponry directly on the White House, which signaled to everyone that it was finally acceptable to mock the president. Dick Cavett treated the whole thing like must-watch TV. We got the mysterious deep-throat imagery from Hollywood, and of course, Watergate gifted its final syllable, gate, to our permanent vocabulary. So yeah, it easily passes our test. All right, with our baseline locked in, let's pull up our scandal scorecard. We're going to evaluate 3 immediate successors from the late 70s and 80s. Koreagate, ABSCAM, and Iran-Contra. Did these events actually meet the strict definition of a true scandal, and did they successfully penetrate pop culture? Part 3, Koreagate. The name game. Was it media hype or a real scandal? So back in the 1970s, word gets out that the South Korean CIA was actually bribing members of Congress with cash-stuffed envelopes and free trips to buy favorable policy. But ultimately, the public viewed this behavior as just ordinary corruption. It was sleazy for sure, but it was basically the everyday greed voters already suspected politicians were engaging in anyway. So it failed the scandal test. Its only real cultural legacy was the media desperately trying to make it sound super important by being the very first to tack on that "gate" suffix left over from Watergate. On to part 4, ABSCAM, the Hollywood hustle and stinging Congress. Now, ABSCAM, this was wild.
It was a massive FBI sting operation with a fake Arab sheikh offering bribes for casino licensing and asylum favors. And several members of Congress actually took the bait on hidden camera. But it sparked this incredibly intense debate over entrapment. As Senator Patrick Leahy asked at the time, was the United States government out to stop crime or create crime? This deep moral debate, paired with a severe abuse of power, definitely elevates this from ordinary corruption into true scandal territory. So ABSCAM definitely passes the scandal test, but its journey into pop culture was kind of weird. Unlike Watergate, it didn't immediately dominate late-night comedy in a lasting way. Years ticked by, and it experienced a really delayed entry into our cultural memory. But then, boom, it finally exploded decades later with the release of the 2013 hit Hollywood movie American Hustle. Okay, Part 5, Iran-Contra, must-see TV, cover-ups, and soap operas. Iran-Contra was this absolute mind-boggling web of international actions during the Reagan administration. The U.S. sold arms to Iran to free hostages and then illegally funneled those funds to Contra rebels in Nicaragua. But the details, the bizarre details, are what really grab you. You had staffers just frantically shredding documents, secret missions involving a cake baked in the shape of a key, and a selectively inscribed Bible. I mean, you literally cannot make this stuff up. It was this elaborate, high-level cover-up that fully cemented it as a genuine, power-driven scandal. And the pop culture impact? It was instant. When they broadcast the congressional hearings, the viewership was off the charts. Oliver North's testimony drew daytime audiences that completely rivaled the massive soap operas of the time, like General Hospital. It became literal must-see TV, turning political figures into household names and gripping the entire nation's attention, exactly like Watergate did. Let's take a look at the final scorecard here. Koreagate, not a true scandal, barely a pop culture footnote aside from the naming trend. ABSCAM, a genuine scandal, for sure, but with a delayed Hollywood entry. Iran-Contra, a definitive yes on both fronts. You've got high-level cover-ups paired with soap opera-level television ratings. And finally, our conclusion, the legacy of scandals. I want to leave you with this to chew on. We've just been looking at an era of broadcast television and comedy albums, right? But in today's 24/7 digital age, where our social media feeds are just a constant fire hose of outrage and instant memes, are we destined to see even more political events permanently cross into pop culture? Or, because of all this constant exposure, have we actually become immune to the shock, just dismissing everything as ordinary corruption? It's a really fascinating question to consider the next time you see a trending headline with a gate attached to it. Thanks for exploring this one with me today.